very good morning, Mr. Heng Swee, Keat, Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore and Patron of the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore, Professor Tan Tai Yong, Chairman of the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore, and he's also the Chairman of the Singapore chapter of the Singapore-India Partnership Foundation. Mr. Kok Ping Soon, Chief Executive Officer of the Singapore Business Federation, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural Singapore-India Forum. Themed The Next Phase, the forum will explore the growth potential and foster closer ties between Singapore and India. Eminent speakers from Singapore and India will discuss and share insights on advancing business and trade connectivity, as well as on the next phase of cooperation between the two countries. This forum is jointly organized by the Singapore chapter of the Singapore-India Partnership Foundation, SIPF for short, Institute of South Asian Studies, ISAS, and the Singapore Business Federation, SBF. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite Professor Tan Tai Yong, Chairman of the Institute of South Asian Studies, to address us. Please, Professor Tan, please.
Mr. Heng Swee Keat, Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore and Patron of ISAS, Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues. Good morning and welcome to the inaugural Singapore-India Forum. This forum is the result of a partnership between Singapore chapter of the Singapore-India Partnership Foundation, the Institute of South Asian Studies at NUS, and the Singapore Business Federation. Our aim is to bring together industry experts from both India and Singapore to create a platform to discuss key issues facing our economies and how cooperation can be further enhanced. This forum is taking place at a particularly opportune moment. About a week ago, the second Inter-Ministerial Strategic Roundtable was held in Singapore, and Prime Minister Modi is presently on a two-day official visit here. Some people have asked me this morning whether I had some foresight or advanced information and had planned this to coincide with these momentous occasions. I can tell you my priority then was to secure DPM's time and to make sure that he's able to give us his time this morning. I didn't know that Prime Minister was going to come for a visit this week. So we are very happy that this has been a very happy coincidence. India and Singapore have shared a close relationship for decades, characterized by significant economic cooperation. Since the early 1990s, when India liberalized its economy, Singapore has become the leading source of foreign direct investment in India. The range of these investments covers various sectors, including manufacturing, financial services, and pharmaceuticals. Trade relations between the two nations are also expanding. Singaporean companies are increasingly making their presence felt in India. Singapore Airlines is a partner for Tata in its airline ventures. DBS is expanding its footprint in the banking sector with a focus on SMEs, and Capital Land is present in the real estate sector. At the present time, Indian companies and startups are also setting up operations in Singapore, attracted by its ease of doing business. For India, Singapore has a central role in its Act East policy, which has evolved from its earlier Look East policy. The outlook for this partnership is highly promising. The complementarities between the two countries are robust, and each can play a crucial role in the other's development. By cooperating in areas like digitalization, environmental sustainability, trade and food, they can complement each other's needs and strengths effectively. During the recent IMSR meeting, the leaders discussed enhancing cooperation between India and Singapore in emerging areas. 6 pillars were identified. They include digitalization, skill development, sustainability, healthcare and medicine, advanced manufacturing, and connectivity. I'd mentioned earlier that this forum is taking place at an opportune time, given the high-level visits that we are having from India. But there is a larger historical moment that I want to mention that makes the deepening of this relationship very crucial. India is becoming the fastest and most promising large economy in the world and is on track to become the world's third largest economy. Regionally, India serves as a significant economic partner for ASEAN as a whole. India and Southeast Asia together make up a quarter of the world's population, 15% of the world's GDP, and are the fastest growing regions in the world. Recently, speaking at the ISS 20th anniversary dinner, President Tharman Shanmugaratnam shared his belief that India and Southeast Asia are poised to create a new era of opportunity, equity, and sustainability. By investing in human potential, resisting global economic fragmentation, and collaborating on climate change, these two regions can best secure not only their national interests, but the larger global good. There is indeed much to look forward to in this relationship. I'm very grateful to DPM Heng for taking time off his busy schedule to speak to us this morning. I look forward to listening to his keynote, which I'm sure will offer important insights and set the frame for a fruitful discussion about the next phase of Singapore-India's economic collaboration. We are glad to be joined by eminent experts from the industry to talk about future-oriented themes and ideas, and I look forward to today's discussion. Before I conclude, I would like to thank those who have helped in organizing this forum, the team at ISES, as well as the Singapore Business Federation, colleagues there, and the Singapore-India Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tan. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor now to invite Mr. Heng Swee Keat, Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore and patron of ISAS, to deliver the keynote address. DPM, please.
Professor Tan Tai Yong, Chairman, Institute of South Asian Studies and US, Mr. Kok Ping Soon, CEO, SPF, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. I join Tai Yong in welcoming you, especially friends from overseas, to this Singapore-India Forum. Let me also congratulate the Institute of South Asian Studies, the Singapore-India Partnership Foundation, and the Singapore Business Federation for convening this inaugural forum. As Tai Yong mentioned earlier, the timing of this forum is fortuitous. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently visiting Singapore, his 5th visit here since he first took office 10 years ago. I know some of you might be a little disappointed that you thought Prime Minister Modi was here. Last week, we also convened the second India-Singapore Ministerial Roundtable that brought together 10 ministers from both sides covering key portfolios. As Tai Yong said earlier, the timing of this is pure coincidence. But I wonder whether Tai Yong and his ISAS team have a sage who foretold the future and knew that Prime Minister Modi was coming, or even better, were able to align the stars in such a way that you caused Prime Minister Modi to come at this right moment. So I shall ask Prime Minister Modi later when I see him. So perhaps if that is the case, we should rename Institute of South Asian Study as the Institute of Strategic Alignment of Stars. Now, let's take this opportunity of this inaugural forum to review what Singapore and India have done together so far and to look forward to the next phase as the theme of this forum. Now, looking back, ties between India and Singapore go back centuries, if not millennia. But two recent moments stand out. The first is 1965, the year Singapore became independent. India was one of the first countries to recognize Singapore's independence. In fact, just 15 days after we became a republic. And India's support helped Singapore gain acceptance into important Afro-Asian organizations. For us, being part of platforms like the Non-Aligned Movement enabled us to build ties, develop our networks, and build partnerships for development. The second moment is 1991, the year India liberalized its economy. India introduced major reforms and opened its economy to the world. She also initiated its Look East policy to step up its strategic engagement with Southeast Asia. Singapore and then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong, in particular, strongly supported India's efforts to look east. Mr. Goh regarded China and India as two external wings for the Singapore economy. I still remember Mr. Goh saying that at one of the meetings. Now, PM Goh was ably supported by Minister George Yeo, whom Indian friends regarded as a reincarnated Indian, because he knew so much about India. Now, the next decade saw steady growth in business and commercial linkages between Singapore and India. This culminated in the 2005 signing of the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, or CECA, which I personally led the negotiations for. Now, it took me 3 years. I negotiated with 2 chief negotiators because the first retired before it could be done. But I was very persistent. And by then, I've been married to my wife for a number of years. My wife saw how I worked and regretted that she agreed to marry me too easily, that she should have been a better negotiator. And so the outcome of negotiating CECA is that now I have a harder time negotiating with my wife. Now, CECA was the first such agreement between Singapore and a South Asian country. Today, it is one of Singapore's 27th implemented free trade agreements. Since CECA was signed, annual bilateral trade has grown by 2.5 times, from $20 billion Sing dollars in 2005 to 51.2 billion in 2022. Singapore was also the largest external investor into India in financial year 2022. Tai Yong is aware of some of the major companies that have invested, Tai Yong and Ping Soon have invested in India, and similarly receiving Indian companies' investments in Singapore. Now, this stronger trade and investment flows have strengthened our economies and, importantly, created good jobs for our peoples. Now, this point is worth emphasizing, that the Singapore-India partnership through the decades has enabled growth and development on both sides. For governments around the world, one of the chief responsibilities is to promote economic growth and development. This is not an end by itself. Achieving growth is a means to uplifting the lives and livelihoods of our peoples and improving the prospects for future generations. Collaborating across borders to leverage complementary strengths and expertise is critical to growth and development. Autarky leads to a dead end. Collaboration has been and will continue to be the story of the Singapore-India partnership. Two economies of vastly different size, scale, and history, finding ways to work together with common causes, pursue win-win outcomes, and improve the lives of our peoples. This morning, as part of Prime Minister Modi's visit, he and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will witness the exchange of a number of memorandum of understanding between our two countries. This aims to deepen cooperation in areas such as digital cooperation, healthcare and medical education, semiconductor supply chains, and education and skills development. These agreements between governments provide the framework and bridges, but it is the private sector and other stakeholders like universities that must take action to initiate new activities and build new connections. So I encourage all of you here to make full use of this and spread the words so as to shape the next chapter of the Singapore-India partnership. Now, what does the next phase hold for Singapore-India collaborations? How can we shape and steer them towards even more impactful outcomes? So let me share 3 suggestions. First, economic growth will remain a work in progress. It is never done, and in fact, you'll become more complex. It is useful to see the trajectory of the Singapore-India partnership within the context of the wider Asian growth story. The past 30+ years of globalization since the end of the Cold War have helped Asia become the epicenter of global growth. Asia's share of GDP has grown from around 20% in the 1970s to around 45% today. I think in Asia, if you look at the growth story, I think some of you who are older may remember about the flying geese story. And I think the flying geese in our part of the world in the earlier days of course, Japan as the lead geese and reducing friction for all the rest of us. So then the Asian dragons came in and then the Asian tigers. And that, I think, also prompted the Mr. Deng Xiaoping to realize that, look, the Asian economies are growing so well. What did we do wrong? And this reform and opening up unleashed a new chapter in globalization. So if all this changes, Asia's share of GDP has grown from around 20% in the 1970s to around 45% today. The steady opening of Asian markets, including India's, coupled with closer economic integration, has had tangible impact on the lives of people in the region. In purchasing power parity terms, GDP per capita in the Asia Pacific grew by almost 7 times between 1990 and 2023. In the same period, GDP per capita in India specifically grew by almost 8 times. Today, Asia remains an economic bright spot. The region is projected to contribute almost 60% of real global GDP growth this year. The IMF estimates Asia collectively will grow by 4.5% and 4.3% in 2024 and 2025. This will outpace global growth estimates of 3.2% and 3.3% respectively. But Asia needs to continue to catch up. The per capita GDP of India and most parts of Asia are far below that of advanced economies like the US and Europe. Today, the region accounts for almost 60% of the global population. India's population alone makes up almost 1/6 of the world's total. So to continue to uplift our peoples, there is much more that we need to do. Unfortunately, there's now growing pushback against globalization in some advanced economies. There's anxiety about loss of jobs from more severe competition arising from globalization, and the current digital revolution will leave many behind if they are not properly educated. And these are further compounded by rising geopolitical tensions, including wars in Europe and the Middle East and the US-China contestation. Concerns over security are disrupting efficient supply chains across industries, sectors, and borders. So to advance our growth and development, Singapore, India, and the rest of Asia must continue to strengthen our economic connectivity and integration to allow for capital, ideas, and talents to find their optimal users. The significance of CECA lies not just in deepening economic linkages between India and Singapore. Its wider value is in serving as a pathfinder for other agreements to foster closer economic linkages between India and ASEAN, and India and other Asian economies. Indeed, after CECA was signed in 2005, the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement was signed in 2009, so 4 years later. And 6 years later, by 2015, ASEAN countries and India also signed a trade in services agreement as well as an investment agreement. So I see many high commissioners and ambassadors here, including many from Southeast Asia. I think they will agree with me that there is much more that India and ASEAN can do together. ASEAN has strong economic prospects with over 670 million people, rising urbanization, and good GDP prospects. And the digital economy in ASEAN is also one of the fastest growing globally. And importantly, we are open to working with partners from around the world. So India has not yet joined the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, the world's largest free trade agreement that includes all 10 ASEAN countries and some others. So I hope that India can revisit the merits of joining the RCEP at some time in the future. I said earlier that the growth path will be more complex going forward. Collectively, as a region, we must build the right capabilities to stimulate growth and unlock new opportunities. And this leads to my second observation. that technology will be a decisive advantage to the next phase of partnerships between Singapore and India and the rest of Asia. The Singapore-India partnership has a good start in this regard. CapitaLand, for example, has a sizable portfolio in India, including IT, business, and logistics parks, and is working to double its India portfolio in the coming years. Most recently, it inaugurated its International Tech Park Chennai in October 2023. India's achievements in recent years have shown how technological innovations can help to leapfrog the development journey. The Aadhaar card, for example, has proven to be a game changer in bringing millions of people digitally into the economy and to benefit from social support scheme. Similarly, going forward, we must explore how technologies can be leveraged, including across borders, to improve bilateral and regional connectivity. Singapore and India have been early movers in this domain. In February 2023, our Prime Ministers launched a real-time payments linkage between Singapore's PayNow and India's Unified Payments Interface, or UPI. This has enabled customers of participating financial institutions in both countries to send and receive funds between bank accounts or e-wallets, providing a safe, simple, and cost-effective way of making cross-border fund transfers. And earlier this morning, our two countries also agreed to deepen digital cooperation, including in enabling data flows, digital public infrastructure, business-to-business digital linkages, and cybersecurity. By working together to promote greater cross-border data flows and interoperability of digital systems, Singapore and India can support businesses from ASEAN and India looking to leverage new growth opportunities in each other's expanding digital economies. Technology and innovation will also be critical to overcoming common challenges and shaping a more resilient future. Challenges like climate change, food security, aging populations, and public health are commonly shared across borders and regions. Facing common challenges, we should share solutions. When we can deploy solutions at scale and bring down the cost, it benefits everyone. Singapore has committed 28 billion Sing dollars to strengthening our research, innovation, and enterprise, or RIE, ecosystem between 2021 and 2025. We hope to serve as a global Asia node, bringing together partners from around the world, Asia, Europe, the US, and others, to co-create new and novel solutions to shared challenges. Take climate change and sustainability, for example. Around the world, countries have stepped up momentum on their efforts to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Singapore and India have set net zero emissions targets of 2050 and 2070, respectively. And many other countries globally have set their own targets by or around mid-century. With this common challenge, Singapore and India, together with others, can collaborate to advance the decarbonization of our economies. And this includes cross-border electricity trade and new energy platforms like renewable energy, green hydrogen, and green ammonia. So I hope that in the next phase of the Singapore-India partnership and the broader partnership in our region, we can stretch our imagination and chart a better future and join hands with each other and partners around the world to realize our goals. These are all shared challenges, and it makes sense for us to just work together. Now, this brings me to my third and final observation. To navigate the complex growth path ahead and to harness the power of technology and innovation for a better future, it is critical to deepen understanding and strengthen trust. I'm always a believer that our time is far better spent dealing with constructive issues and thinking about how to chart a better future than to spend time to quarrel with each other over minor things. And this applies to my own political beliefs as well. Now, at a political level, Singapore's ties with India are anchored in deep trust and goodwill. This is Prime Minister Modi's 5th visit here. And we also hosted 5 senior members of the Indian cabinet just last week. Singapore was also the coordinator for ASEAN-India dialogue relations between 2021 and 2024, during which ASEAN-India relations were upgraded to a comprehensive strategic partnership. On the business front, the Singapore Business Federation has worked with partners like the Confederation of Indian Industry and the Federation of Indian Chambers and Commerce and Industry to deepen understanding and build confidence between our respective business communities over the years. For the next phase, let us also enable the young and rising generations in both Singapore and India to have a better understanding of the opportunities that lie ahead for our partnership. I commend the Singapore-India Partnership Foundation, a brainchild of ESM Goh Chok Tong, for your role in deepening people-to-people exchanges. I'm happy to hear that the inaugural Students Immersion Program to India last year, involving students from the Singapore University of Social Sciences, was successful. Tai Yong played a very key role as president of SUSS to do this. And the second run will start later this month with students from other Singapore universities as well. Equally important to fulfilling Asia's growth potential is to deepen understanding and trust among our peoples. This starts with an appreciation of the complexity and diversity across Asia. In Singapore, maintaining social cohesion and turning our diversity of races, religions, and languages into strength has been a key enabler of our political stability and of economic development. This has been a core pillar of our governance and fundamental to our value proposition as a global Asia node, to be able to connect across cultures and languages and bring people together to do impactful and purposeful work. As Asia looks to unlock creativity and innovation and harness technological advances for future growth, it is important that India and the rest of Asia continue to tap on this diversity and complexity as a source of strength. Asia is not a homogeneous region, but a complex and diverse configuration of nation states, some with very, very long history. So there's much shared history and culture, and yet each country is different in her own way. So we need to create more opportunities for peoples in Asia to better appreciate this diversity and to turn this diversity into a strength. So before I conclude, let me take a moment to acknowledge ISAS, as well as other think tanks like the East Asia Institute, Middle East Institute, ISIS Yusof Ishak Institute, and the various institutes within the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy for enhancing knowledge about Asia's diversity and complexity. ISAS in particular celebrates its 20th anniversary this year. Over the past 2 decades, ISAS has deepened understanding of the complexity and opportunities in India, as well as the rest of South Asia, among government, businesses, media, and the wider public here. At this inaugural India-Singapore Forum, it is most appropriate for me to express my deepest appreciation to founding ISAS Chairman, Ambassador Gopinath Pillai. His wisdom and guidance helped steer ISAS to its heights it has scaled. Gopi, as his friends call him, readily agreed to be the founding chairman of ISAS when I was tasked to approach him to lend his insights and wisdom to this startup. So I was very delighted when he agreed. Now, Gopi is unable to join us today, but I'm happy to see Gopi's family, Shamala and Priya, here today at this special forum. Yeah, and I know that Prakash was also a strong supporter of this work. So please convey our appreciation to Gopi. It is most fitting that ISAS Endowment Fund has been renamed the Gopinath Pillai ISAS Endowment Fund in honor of Gopi's many significant contributions. This endowment fund will help build high-quality research on contemporary India and South Asia, nurture outstanding students, and raise international understanding of the region, all near and dear causes to Gopi. And I encourage ISAS research faculty to tap on this fund to further deepen research and scholarship, especially on some of the common challenges and opportunities facing Singapore, India, South Asia, and the rest of Asia that I described earlier. So in conclusion, over the years, Singapore and India have built strong foundations for an enduring partnership. The next phase of the Singapore-India partnership is very promising. We are confident that continued bilateral exchanges, such as Prime Minister Modi's visit today, will unlock many new opportunities for collaboration that will benefit not only our two countries, but also the wider ASEAN and Asian region, and even globally. In a more contested world, our steady partnership can serve as a beacon to rally like-minded partners to cooperate for growth and development, to harness technology and innovation, and to deepen trust and appreciation for each other's diversity. So let us work together towards a better future for all. I wish you all a meaningful and productive conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DPM. DPM is actually chatting with Ambassador Gopinath Pillai's family there. Yes, Mrs. Pillai. Ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Prime Minister will take his leave now, but may I kindly request you to be seated for a short while longer. Thank you.